So while previously we talked about how our main grid is the dynamic grid, there are some benefits to static that makes it rather unique. So I'm just going to take this cube, scale it down, and we're just going to add a loop cut in the middle, grab this edge, bring it up, grab this entire edge loop, just bevel it with Control B, and from here we can press D, bring out a circle, and we're just going to cut a circle into the surface, but we'll press Shift T in order to give it a little bit of depth to it. And if we press Alt V and we look at our wireframe, we see that our wireframe looks a little bad. So let's Control A, Visual Geometry to Mesh, and from here let's just take a moment and sharpen it in order to protect all our boundaries. And we can actually just select just this top face because it's being isolated by a seam with L, and by pressing Shift H we can hide it. And if I press Alt W and we change over to Static Grid, Static Grid has an additional behavior of being able to perform knife projection, which is really interesting. Another thing about Static Grid is while moving it, we can hold Shift in order to move it finely. So sometimes you want to do fine translation. That is possible inside of Grid. And I'm just shift scrolling to add some additional spans to it. And by pressing Shift K, we can actually perform a knife project inside of Static Grid, allowing us to basically project geometry onto other surfaces. So sometimes I'll use this for some studies on topological replacement, and I do have quite a bit of fun using it inside of Boxcutter. We see that some of these surfaces didn't actually knife very well. So let's undo this and let's try that again. More than likely I began on the surface when really I should have been oriented to view. And we can press G, hold Shift in order to move it in a fine increment, Shift scroll to add a few sections, and Shift K, and we see that this one came out perfect. So sometimes when you're working oriented to a surface, that's something that you want to be aware of because it can affect your knife projection. So here I am just going in, dissolving a little bit of geometry to clean up this particular surface. Keep in mind, this is just a demonstration. I've done a couple of videos now on voxelization and what our plans are with it, but just like that, we've now given this a very nice quad-based geometry base to start with. And then if you're using Mesh Machine, you could always just get your boundary selection and then press Y and use Boolean cleanup to really just mop this area up as far as cleanup goes, giving us a much nicer result on the shading.